Alright, so we're going to begin the last shir on Hilchos Melicha. We're holding towards the end of Siman Ayin Vav, and then we'll go into Ayin Zayin and Ches, which are very short Simanim, just one seif in each one of them. Pretty much where we left off was regarding the status of the shpud. It's interesting that you can have Basar that was not salted, and you could lechatchila go ahead and put it on the shpud, on the spit, on the fire, on the barbecue, and you don't have to go, and you can save yourself the step of Melicha, of course. Nura mishev shoiv, the fire does have the ability, the heat of the fire, to draw out the blood, as long as the blood is able to drain away from the meat. It's perfectly fine, even though we do have the minig of rinsing it off before, rinsing it off after, putting a little bit of salt on the meat. But me'ikar adin, even if you did none of that, the fire is strong enough to draw out all the blood. So the question was, what about the shpud? You're going to be doing more meat on the next time around. Would it make a difference if it was salted or not? I mean, because if it's not salted, if it's not salted, perhaps, as it's taking out its own blood, kebolokach poltoy. So there's a lot of diyunim. There is some discussion about the pros and cons of doing something like that. Aren't you better off just making libun on the shpud to avoid the problems of potentially having blood absorbed in that, affecting any future meat, especially if that meat doesn't have its own blood? We hold kebolokach poto even legabi the shpud itself, because in the end, as it is being perhaps absorbed from the meat that is being roasted now, it's also coming out, or it's being burnt in the process. So we don't have to concern ourselves so much.
We're talking about the shpud. It's going shpud and simultaneously coming out.
Coming out, yeah, being burnt.
During that exact same process of roasting meat.
Right.
During that same process.
Yeah, and that, however, we only apply to the Isser of Dam. We have to be very clear on that. Somebody used a barbecue to roast his ham, right, or whatever it is, pork chops. It's treif. We're not going to say, well, kebolokach poltoy. We're not going to say it's burned off as it's being barbecued. It did absorb blias of tarfus. I mean, that's what treifus is all about, whether it's an oven or stove or barbecue or keli, anything, unless it's glass, which is non-porous. Otherwise, you have a problem. Yeah, we're machmer in Pesach. Yeah, unless it's if you know for a fact that he used it with hot tarfus, you may want to be makbid on that.
Plate?
Plates, yeah, sure.
You're not talking about.
I'm not talking about cheres right now. I'm not talking about right now China.
Or one of these that I used actually for cooking purposes.
Right.
Yeah. So that you don't mean.
Yeah,
you mean
no, I don't mean that, because even on the plane, if you were in first class, they may still serve you klecheres, the coffee, in porcelain. Can you have the coffee? Yes, because in that mug, they're not going to cook tray food or tray soups or whatever can you make. So we don't suspect that. Can you use a coffee maker for your own purposes? You come, you rented a goyish home, like many people do, vacation homes. Can you use the coffee maker? What are you going to make coffee in it? You're going to put hot water, put your filter, put your coffee. And the answer is yes. First of all, even if something was not right, as far as the tam of something being there that is not kosher, it's more than 24 hours. That's if there was some tam. Most of the time, most coffees are no problem. So you have a chazaka, you have roiv, whichever you want to apply, there's no problem. And it's glass.
If you wanted to be makbid, we just pour boiling water. Right?
Exactly. Then you can pour boiling water. So and remember, it's glass too, so it's not such.
Or is there a difference between regular, like Pyrex, those kinds?
Yes, there is a little bit of the difference when it comes to the method of Hagala. The method of Hagala. On Pesach, for Pesach, there are some chumras about Pyrex.
Well, what about not Pesach? Coffee makers,
well, same thing. Yeah, but it's not Pyrex. It's still not Pyrex. It's a little bit stronger. But yes, with Pyrex, it would be more of an issue as to the form of, or the method of Hagala, how you would kasher it, if you can kasher it. And, if you know for sure it was used with treif, it would be best not to.
And if you don't know for sure?
Not really, because there's enough sfekas here. Sfekas on top of sfekas. There is a method even with China there's a svara, there's an opinion that if it was not used for an entire year, it would be okay. Then there is the opinion that holds that even with glass, for Pesach, you can put it 3 days. You know that? In water? You empty it out, pour water again, empty it out, pour water again. And then even for even for Ashkenazim that would work. Whereas for Sephardim it's not a problem.
So Ashkenazim would require that in order
with certain crystals, they would say, okay, you want to use it, that's the only one you have, go ahead and use this method then of Hagala.
But just let's say a regular glass plate.
It's not really Hagala, yeah.
A regular.
Yeah.
Regular
If you know for sure it was used with cold, then I tell people that even the silver cups for Kiddush, you don't have to make a Hagala.
It's washed.
But a lot of Ashkenazim do a Hagala to everything they can. It's an extra chumrah. It's just because for Pesach. In reality, you don't need it because you did not have hot wine in that cup.
But I can tell you,
it's cold drinks.
Even Ashkenazim over
Oh yeah, good. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, because you may hear otherwise.
I'm talking about Kiddush cup.
I'm talking about the Kiddush cup.
Not
Yeah,
but
that's exactly the halacha. It doesn't really require.
Never did for hot.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you use it once,
Some people use that Kiddush cup, use it for beer.
For beer?
For beer, I know.
A koisa of Kiddush for beer? For beer, you would use a glass.
No, for Havdalah. They may have used that Kiddush cup for beer.
Oh, they would put beer on the Kiddush cup?
Into the Kiddush cup.
Nah. If I would use beer, I might as well use a glass or a mug.
You're right. No, I'm not talking about the drink.
I'm talking about Havdalah. If I would use beer for Havdalah,
well, what happens if you did?
I would use my Kiddush cup for it.
What if you did?
Yeah, it's cold.
It's cold. So
it's cold. Right, that wouldn't make a difference.
Wash it out.
Yeah. All right, but anyway, so we went through the various details.
So all the chumras,
Okay.
we were just touching on
Yeah.
Pesach. So all the chumras we say with respect on Pesach primarily are shayach when it comes to קיהן, yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
And things that sheni, if it was with hot things,
Yeah.
especially if it's davar gush.
Because for Pesach there's more chumras,
Yeah.
only because of that.
If it's used for davar gush, then certainly one should be in the rishon.
Yeah. Even the table. Let me ask you, the table. There's a minhag to pour hot boiling water on a table, on a countertop, unless it's granite. Why? What for? Because you may have put a hot food item, not a pot. Food item directly. That's possible. But come on, are there really blias from that hot food already in the countertop? And let's say there is. I can just cover it up with contact paper or with something else. Why should I have to be caught? Do I have to do both? So me'ikar din, you don't have to do both. You should do one. Because for Pesach we're not just to clean off the surface. There might be some blias. Perhaps even if there are no blias, there could be some mamashas on the surface left over. So we want to do a thorough cleaning. Our forefathers in Europe even there's stories about women who used to clean the handles of the doors.
Sure. Also consider for our next
Yeah?
year. Since we already started.
Yeah, I leave the hard work for the women. They'll just Pesach, let them deal with it. No, but you're right. I mean, one of these days we can. All right, but getting back to our discussion here, dam is different than blias. Dam has special status. It's shortic. It's smooth. It slips off. It's not like a tarfus. And you may, of course, claim that also the dam is not always the doraisa, depending on which dam we're talking about, but that's a separate point, whether the dam is doraisa or rabbanan. It just behaves differently. Now, besides that, we do have the other rules of kebola kapolto when dealing with fire and so forth. On top of that, however, we need to remember, or at least recall, that in speaking about dam, there's also something called mohel, which we'll talk a little bit more about today, a little bit more, because it applies to the halachas. What's mohel? Mohel is the juice that remains after the blood has come out. The blood that needs to come out has come out. Now there's still some red liquid in the meat. You can see it many, many times. You take it from the butcher, you put it in, oh, wow. Mohel is mutter. You can even drink it. It's not asr. And as we're going to see, there's no real maris ayin either on that, because it looks different. For example, if you have blood on an apple after biting it, that came from you. That's not asr for you to have. But it's because of maris ayin you should wash off the apple. Blood that you still have in your gums, nobody can see it. You can swallow it. No problem. Gum that came out and is already done up, rinse it off because of marasayim. So same thing with fish blood. We don't have a cup of fish blood because of marasayim unless you have the scales of the fish there. Scales of the fish. Yeah, I was going to have such a drink. I don't know. But anyway. Okay. Yeah, health and something. Yeah. So with mohel, as we will see, it's very different because it's noticeably different than blood. Then it may not have the problem of marasayim. But I just wanted to refreshen our memory as far as the difference between dam and mohel. There may be something left over, but that mohel is mutter. Okay, remember that mohel is not a problem. The only problem is if there's any blood left over. And that is sometimes I consider that perhaps no matter what we did, perhaps there is some blood left over, and that is why chalita, according to some, like the Rambam, would be required.
But we don't know how to do it.
And we don't do it today, yeah. Put it in hot boiling water, zoom, and that singes the meat, freezes whatever is there. It won't be porish from makom to makom. It won't move from spot to spot within the meat, which according to some is a problem. Once you cook it, especially when it does have the potential of moving. So anyway, these are just a few concepts that we've already covered in the past that are going to come back here. So that's why I mentioned them again. In Sif Hey, towards the end of Siman Ayin Dov, we're dealing with the following situation. Sli, shelo nimlach, v'chatcho al gabe kikar. So you have a roasted piece of meat that was not salted, and you went ahead and cut it on top of a piece of bread. Even though you may see on the loaf of bread some coloring, red coloring, mutar, it's mutar. As long as it was roasted to the point that it's edible, l'rov b'nei adam. And we spoke about that. What is the amount of roasting that should be done for meat to be yoytze, according to most opinions, that the blood is out, that it's okay to eat half, not a third. And some may say, even machol ben druso in Hilchos Shabbos is a machloikes whether it's a third or half. Remember that?
Yeah, the same thing.
Right, yeah. So here we would aim for half, or like the Taz says in various places, until it becomes very, very white. Meat is so dry that you know for sure you've roasted it, as we say in Yiddish, durch and durch, completely, thoroughly. And then you don't have the problem or suffix that maybe some blood is still in there. And now, for some reason, by the way, could you figure out why would somebody want to cut a piece of meat top of a loaf of bread? Because maybe he doesn't have where to cut it. I mean, otherwise, huh? He needs a place where to cut it.
Is this raw?
No, it's lean. Roasted meat. Now you want to cut it.
And I know why he wants to cut it.
It's a sandwich.
Not necessarily, but
yeah.
he doesn't want to waste the taste of the meat.
Okay, could be that too, yeah. So
like the old days where they
exactly, yeah.
the bread instead.
Right, bread instead, yeah.
Where did he put?
Yeah, it could be that the bread was sitting on a hard surface where he wouldn't want to put the meat there, but the bread is okay. Either way, even if the bread is on the table, somehow he did that. He cut it on top of the bread, even though you may notice odem, redness in the bread. It's mutar as long as it was roasted. Kedei sheyeroi lo'achil lerov bnei adam. So the Ramah says, it's actually the Beis Yosef, but he brings it down. Dehainu chatzitz liyosoi, at least half. Hu adin shamohel belo kikar namishori. Don't think that just the redness on the bread is okay. Even the liquid that you now see oozing out of the meat, called mohel, that we just talked about, that's mutter at this point. It's not blood. Once you've reached chatzitz liyosoi, you're safe. You don't have to worry about it. If it would be before chatzitz liyosoi, it could still be real blood. Pri Megadim explains that the reason why the mohel is mutter, even though it's you might think it should be also because of marasayim, is because it doesn't look like blood. People know, oh, this is not blood. Blood looks like blood. Mohel doesn't. But some are machmir. The Ramah here we see is matir as well. The next halacha. See Vav. Basar shetzonim below melicha. Let's say you were roasting meat again without melicha. And this does not mean that you didn't put any salt. You did a little bit of salt, perhaps. But here we're going to see that it makes a big difference if you did or did not. The little salt, actually, there's two places where you could put salt, but I don't want to confuse you. Let's just assume here you didn't use any salt for the roasting. And even if he did, it wouldn't make a difference, because what he's doing right now is Basar shetzolim belo Melicha, Basar that you are roasting directly without the regular process of Melicha. Ein noisnim kli tachtov lekabel shamnunis anoitiv imeno. You know what you can get from this halacha, from many of these halacha? You actually get, you see a window into their lives of what they did to, how they lived, how they ate. You all know what schmaltz is. Why did you use schmaltz once upon a time? Goose fat, even chicken fat. They didn't have no margarine, no canola oil. Yeah, that was jars full of schmaltz that was used as a grease, as a fat.
But it was also considered very tasty.
Tasty, yeah. Grieben, you know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still
Yeah.
it's a schmaltz in Germany.
Yeah,
It's
in Germany
very
was
popular
it is.
food, sure.
Yeah. Okay,
They
so
used to force feed ice and fat.
oh,
Right?
it wasn't just for the liver.
That wasn't.
It was for the fat too.
The fat.
Yeah. So, but meat that you're roasting without melicha, you don't put a cup, a vessel of sorts, to receive the fats that are going to drip down, unless it has already reached the point of roasting that it is edible, fully edible. Why? Because if you're going to be grabbing, catching the fat that's dripping from this meat, that's what they're interested in doing. That's why he mentions this. This was done apparently. It may still contain blood. That makes sense, right? This meat hasn't been salted. Remember, this is being roasted without being salted. So blood may be mixed into that fat. So don't put a kli underneath to catch the shamnunis that's dripping until the tzli has been at least royu la'achila, which, as we said earlier, is half. Beyond that point, there's really no blood coming down anymore. Now, this is based on the Gemara that discusses this scenario. And over there, the Gemara says you only want to do it after smoke starts coming, vapor, smoke, I guess it's steam, whatever you want to call it, starts coming out of the meat or of the coals. And the Chachamim pretty much figured out that once you smoke or vapor coming up from the coals or from the meat, it's not blood anymore there. There's no blood anymore there, because if it would still be full of blood, the blood somehow would soak or extinguish any of the vapors that would come out. So if you don't see, there's blood dripping on the coals, or there's blood coming out of the meat. So once you just see hot smoke, hot vapor, whatever you want to call it, coming out of either the two, that is the sign of that the blood is no longer there. And therefore anything before that would still be considered blood. So what does the Gemara say there? And that's already some of the statements in the Gemara are subject to interpretation by the Rishonim, the Poskim, as to what exactly was meant. But I'm just speaking in general terms. There's a piece of advice given in the Gemara there, that in this cup that you just caught some shuman, you may have a suffix legaba if it has dam or not mixed in it. Put a couple of grains of salt into that cup, and voila. What will happen is that the blood, I should say the salt, will take down the blood with it. Follow me? Put a little bit of salt into that schmaltz, into that, and somehow that little bit of salt will have the koach of taking down the blood. You know what emulsion is?
Which language?
In English. Emulsion is something very interesting.
Emotion?
Emulsion.
Emulsion. Okay.
EMULSION. It's something that sometimes needs to be done in certain ice cream, chocolates, and candies. It is, if I remember correctly, look it up if maybe I'm wrong, it's been a while, it's basically taking two items that don't mix well, water and oil, and somehow getting them to mix anyway by emulsion. This process that achieves.
It's like a marriage, women.
Oh, I didn't think about that yet. I guess you can apply somehow.
Shalom Bais.
What is the recipe?
Shalom Bais is another word for emulsion.
Okay, very good. Yes. So, let me know if that's the definition or not. Let me know. What?
I wonder.
Yeah. So here, if you drop a little bit of salt into this mixture, you actually do the opposite of emulsion. You'll actually separate the blood, any blood there, from the oil, which is what you want to do. And guess what? If you did that, you could scoop up that which is on the surface, because the blood is at the bottom. If there was any blood, it would be at the bottom. Great idea. That's what the Gemara says. In other words, that's the advice given there, that in any case, since we don't know, perhaps if there's still some blood, do that, and then you're safe. The Shach and Taz over here, the Ma'aseh, Halacha, say that after you did half of the tzliya, you don't need salt. If you did chatzit tzliya, you don't even have to bother, because just about everybody would agree that there's no blood left. I think except for the Darkei Moshe, it's not mashma like that. He would want it anyway. Yeah. But in the Beis Yosef, it's interesting, he has a suffix. If that advice of putting salt was only after you see the smoke, or was it meant only before you see the smoke coming out of the meat or the coals? He had a suffix ligabe that. If you look at Rashi is very straightforward in this particular case, and he says, since we're not bakia as to how much salt to put, don't use that strategy. Because if you put too much salt, you're going to ruin the whole thing. Too much salt will spoil, it's like too many cooks, they say, spoil this, the soup? Too much salt will spoil this mixture. It will become a big mush. And instead of separating, it will just be stuck all together. A glob. Too much salt will cause a glob for it to mix, whereas just the right amount of salt is what will do it. But since we don't know how much, too little won't work, too much is no good, we're not bucking that, so you can't use that. And therefore, of course, the best idea is just to salt the meat. If you were to salt the meat before, then you could put that drip pan right away. If that meat is salted, you could put that, call it drip pan, that's what the drip pans are for today. You could put that drip pan right away and have it catch all that grease if you plan to use that grease. And you know for sure you could use it because that meat has been salted. All right, that was Siman Ayin Vav. We're headed towards Ayin Zayin and Ayin Ches now. Siman Ayin Zayin is Din Ofot Shenimleu Basar Shelo Nimlach. An interesting situation which can happen is you're gonna stuff chicken. Stuffed chicken, stuffed turkey. Stuffing is good. Ofot ugdaim shememalim otam basar. Chicken or small goats that are being stuffed with meat that was not shelo nimlach, that was not salted. Okay. Well, why wasn't it salted? Well, you just roasting the whole thing together as once. Korban Pesach, remember that? You probably don't because it's been many, many years since we had that. But Korban Pesach was roasted as a whole.
Oh yeah, not but just
exactly. And so it was an interesting barbecue. It had certain halachas and how to roast it. It had halachas of what kind of a wood to use. Pomegranate. Because it's completely dry, has no moisture. Because it cannot be cooked, it cannot have any moisture. It has to be roasted with fire. And it can't be metal. Because then it's the heat of the metal, not the heat of the fire. Exactly. So, if you fill them up with meat, shelo nimlach, and this meat has not been salted, if you plan to roast the whole thing together, stuffed chicken, everything is being roasted, mutar. It's okay. Afilu pihem lemala, even though the opening is facing up, and you say, well, if the opening is facing up, where's the blood going to drip? That's okay.
That's what's inside.
Any blood.
Stuffing.
Any blood. In other words, any blood that needs to come out, don't worry about it. You're dealing with Aish. You're dealing with fire here. So even though pihem lemala, none of it has been salted, it's stuffed inside, it's all on the fire, the fire will take care of all of it. That's correct. Yeah. And even in that case, very good. The Kabbalah Kapolto is applied there too. The inside. Right side. Because even though you may have a situation where inside may be absorbing from the outside, eventually whatever went in will come out somehow. The fire is able to do that. Fire, as we will soon see again, works differently than Melicha. It's a very powerful method of just getting rid of extracting blood. Yeah. And you remember the case of meat that was not salted for 3 days. I mean, that's the only solution you have. Yeah. All right. So even pihem lemala, which is interesting, even it's facing up. You would think, well, it can't drain. No, the fire will somehow get to it. The fire will draw it out from all the way from the inside to the outside. Now comes the chidushim here. Even if only the outside was salted, and not the inside meat, the kemoshe boleh dam hamiluim, kach poltoy. In the same way that it may be absorbing the dam of the inside, yeah, it will also be able to extract it. Omit it. Right, yeah, okay. So that's the mechaber. Read the Ramah, and then I'll explain. The more so the inside was salted, v'lo achitzon, and not the outside. The shor is mutter. Why? The nura mishav shoiv, the fire will extract or omit everything. Now, nura mishav shoiv adam min achitzon, from the outside, ve'eno nivla b'pnimi, and it will not be absorbed in the bottom one, in the inside one.
The concern with it, there's nothing coming out of the
Aha.
inside. It might be absorbing for the outside.
Exactly. You hear that? If the inside one was already salted, it means it doesn't have its own blood to counter any blood coming from the outside. It doesn't have its own. If it has its own, well, I get from the outside. I'm giving off mine, I'll give off the rest of it too. But if I don't have any of my own because I've been salted already, not me, but right, okay. Then you would think, like Ilan said, well, there's no power there left to repel that blood. And the answer is, don't worry about it. Nura mishav shoiv, and it will not nivla b'pnimi. So that's the basic understanding of what's going on over here. That we have stuffing, none of it was salted, which is fine. And even if one of them was salted, now here it could make a difference which one it was. So we saw what the Ramah said, that kol shekenim nimlach hapnimi v'lo achitzon the shori. Why kol sheken? Yeah, but why does it say kol sheken? Right, kol shekenim nimlach hapnimi v'lo achitzon the shori. The nura mishav shoiv adam min achitzon v'lo nivla b'pnimi.
Because the exterior meat is more exposed to it. Now, if the exterior meat has been salted and not the interior, so now the interior meat is not blood, the exterior has no blood of its repel, the blood that's from the inside, and who says the fire will be able to reach that far to remove that? So there they might have more of a problem, more of a doubt. But here that it's the inner meat that was sold. And once you factor in that the fire is going to extract the blood of the exterior meat, you don't have to worry that the interior meat...
It's less of a concern. It's less of, in this case, when the interior one was done, is less of a concern, as Ilan pointed out, versus the other situation, where the one outside was done, perhaps, as we will soon see. That's just the basic
halacha. Difference if for whatever you put it back on the fire.
Yeah, we spoke about that several shooting back. If you stopped in the middle and put it back, it may be a problem. Yeah.
It seems to be a problem with.
Yeah, because if you somehow did not do it long enough, then it could have absorbed
blood that doesn't come out yet, but it's now
internally. Right. And now it may not come out later. So that's a very good point. It has to, and we're going to get to that. I'm going to get to an example of that soon. That you want to make sure that you've done the process all the way.
How long is it?
Halfway at least.
Halfway. Depends on the size.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the main idea here is kebolo kach polto. If it does go in, kebolo kach polto, that's one thing. And the Rosh and Toises are the ones that hold that it's mutter whether both of them have been salted. I'm sorry, both of them have not been salted, or either of them is salted. And so therefore even the one that's not salted is not poilet, and it may be absorbing, we still say in Sli kebolo kach polto. So in Sli you're always going to apply the din of kebolo kach polto. Some hold, I saw that Gos Maimon, Hashem Toisves, and the Mordechai is slightly different. If the one on the outside was salted, and not the inside one, only the outside they say is mutter, and the inside one is also. Why is it also? So it depends. The Mordechai sees that the inside is also because he's becoming also because of the blood of the outside that's dripping in. Yeah, as it's being salted.
Oh, you're being salted to get only the outside is being. Because the stuffing is already in meat, and now the meat is.
Let me check one more time. The outside was salted while they were together, of course. Okay, the outside was salted, but not the inside. So the inside absorbed the blood of the outside, according to the Mordechai, and that's why the inside one became asur. The other opinion explains that with the outside wine, the fire will prevent it. The fire will prevent the blood from the inside one getting to it, because the inside one was not salted. But it will not be strong enough to reach the inside one.
So that means that the inside one's.
Right. So in both cases, these points can hold that the inside one is also, but for different reasons. Is it because it's being assered from the outside, or that the fire is not able to get to it?
And that is dafka when the outside one was. Why
Right.
would the fact that the outside one was salted fit the fire from extracting blood from the inside one? But if the outside one wasn't salted, then it would be okay.
Let me see. The outside one, even though it's absorbing from the blood that's coming out now, okay?
So whose blood is it absorbing?
But it's absorbing now the blood from the inside.
Okay.
The esh monea mimeno.
From the outside.
The esh will prevent the outside having a problem of any blood entering.
Becoming
it.
asur.
Becoming asur.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that wasn't.
Masha'inkin, the inside one, would have a problem. It would not be able to go through.
According to this opinion.
Yeah, according to this opinion.
But my problem is,
Yeah.
we're saying that bedafka when the outside. So he's also following the same the outside one.
Right.
Then we
In
have
other
a
words, the
problem.
outside one will be okay. It's just the inside one will be a problem, according to this.
But if the outside one's salted, would the inside one a problem?
If the outside one, what?
Not salted. The inside one still would be a problem according to opinion.
If the two of them were not salted, for some reason it's better.
Yeah, how is that supposed to be possible?
Yeah.
Why would the fire be more effective regarding the inside one if the outside one's blood?
Yeah, that was a tzorech ian a little bit. They were trying to figure out why would that be more mutter in that case. Well, because somehow, if let's see, what was one of the explanations? Somehow, if neither of them was salted, the fire would be able to go equally through and get to everyone somehow. Okay. And what are we saying now? That, well, you would have to say the other explanation applies, perhaps. That the one on the outside would be asur. I'm sorry, the one on the outside does not become asur. Only the one on the inside becomes asur. So the one on the inside becomes asur either from the blood of the outside.
Then it was salted. So there's no blood.
No. Right. No, I'm saying in the first case. And as a result of that, that the fire cannot get. Okay? That the fire cannot get. As opposed to the fire getting out the blood or that is original blood. Not blood that it's absorbing from the outside meat. I think that was the chiluk that they were trying to make.
Have been salted and we have not.
Exactly.
But here we're talking about.
So in the case of where they both are not, it's easier because there's no interference.
No, because the inside
It's the same kind of blood.
The inside one has blood to give off, which prevents it from absorbing.
Yes.
We have the principle
Right.
still that as long as something is giving off,
Yes,
something
yeah.
it doesn't absorb.
That's right, yeah. No, I'm saying because in the other case, it's according to one opinion, it's absorbing the blood from the outside, and that blood it cannot come.
When it was salted or not salted? Because if it wasn't salted, why should it be absorbing anything with it? Unless you're saying that the fire cannot affect the inner one to give blood.
Yeah. No. I was talking about in the case of where the outside one was salted and not the inside one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Right. So only the outside would be mutter and not the inside one.
Which I'm so.
Right? So one more time. So according to one opinion, the inside one either is becoming also because of the blood of the outside being salted. Right?
That's
the one I'm talking
They were
about.
salted
Yeah.
together, but only the outside one was salted,
Only-
and the inside wasn't salted.
Right, only the outside one
Okay,
was.
so I can see how
Yeah.
that might make a difference. But if the outside one was salted separately, and now they're being roasted together.
Right.
I have difficulties understanding the process behind it that would be the inner one usher in such a...
So you have the two explanations, yes.
Whereas if neither of them was salted, then the inner one would be committed.
No, if neither of them was salted, it would be fine.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, neither of them would be fine. Somehow that worked better because they're both being poilet. You know, they don't have a problem of having absorbed somebody else's blood.
No, but that doesn't help us here, because if the other one was salted, then the other one should have the problem of absorbing. But we said the other one is fine. And
also remember, the one on the outside is closer to the fire than the one on the inside. So that's also brought down.
Yes, but that is also the case if the other one wasn't salted, then the other one is still closer to one. And there we say both.
Yeah.
In other words, we have a situation...
When both of them are the same, there's no problem.
In other words, we have a situation where both were not salted,
right,
and they're on the fire,
sure,
and both are okay. But if the outer one was salted, suddenly the inner one is a problem.
Yes, according to some.
Yeah, according to that opinion, I don't know.
According to that opinion, yeah. Not everybody holds it. Of course, we hold the halacha l'maisa that it's not a problem. We hold kabbalah kapolto in any case. Mechaber goes on to say, Belakdero, of course, asur. If you want to cook it in a pot, and you can't, of course, have it this way, you would have to salt them both
You're going to cook
separately, and you have to do it separately.
The
salting of each one separately. But if you went ahead and after you stuffed it, filled it, only the outside, it will not be strong enough to extract the blood that's inside of the stuffing too.
Now that's when you're going to boil it with that steam.
Right, you're going to be cooking in the pot. Now, before we explain that, the shach, on the Ramah, I think it is, the shach on the Ramah, where the Ramah says if the pnimi was nimlach, if it was salted, if the internal one was salted, then the fire will be drawing out all the blood from the outside one, and it will not go back inside. The shach asers in this case. That's the shach. That's what I said earlier. In the Ramah's case, he says, wait a minute. The one that's salted, the one that's inside was salted, and the one that's outside was not salted. He would aser that too.
The inner one.
Yeah. He says the inner one that is so far from the fire, you don't say kibolo kachpolto. Kibolo kachpolto you can say on the one that's closer to the fire, not on the one that's inside. He's very strong about that. He says, yeah. And he would hold like the Mordechai in another scenario. If the outside one was not nimlach enough, then of course before you do tzli, there may be some blood going into the inside one.
Why would it look from the outside?
Oh, very good. The inside one has its own blood. So they asked this question: why would this be different than basar shenimlach al gabe basar shelo nimlach?
Exactly. I was thinking exactly of the example of the fish.
That's the question.
Fish gives off its blood
He actually mentions it too. He mentions it too. Yeah. Over there we say mehane lemelicha. You can go ahead and salt that piece of meat that has not been salted yet. When it emits its own juice, its own blood, it's going to emit any blood that it absorbs from the outside. So he says it's different because here it's inside. There it's not inside. It's just meat on top of meat. Whatever comes in, it will eventually come out. Here you can't expect it to necessarily be drawn out later with the fire, only because of the physics of how it is placed. Stuffing is different than basar or gabe basar. It's not going to come out. Melicha won't help it. In other words, the fire won't help it even.
Now, how did they know these?
Yeah, I guess they tried it out maybe. But as far as Gdera, it's not enough to salt the outside one. That's very important. Now, as far as the salting the outside, the Taz, very interestingly, brings the Rashal and he holds like him. And he says it's not just not enough to salt the outside, it's not even enough to salt just one side of the chicken. You have to salt usually, you have to salt both sides of the chicken, both sides of the meat. Bedi Evan, when you salted one side of the meat, we learned in the very beginning of Hilchos Melicha, it's okay. It probably went through all the way, even though you're supposed to do it all around. But the Taz is saying there would be here an opinion that says if you have stuffing inside, you got to do both sides. You can't just expect one side to draw the blood from the other side too.
More lenient than the shop because of the
yes, yeah. But not everybody holds like this, Taz. I don't think so. But that was an interesting idea. That's the Rashal. He brings it down. Ramah continues on to say, Chol ze b'di'eved. One more time. Like there are also Ashim Lechitzon, Levado, V'pnim Levado, you have to do both of them separate. But in the Achar Shemilo Molach HaChitzon, if after you fill them you salted the outside, only Eno Mafridan Shemino, it will not draw out the blood from the inside. The Ramah adds, V'chol ze b'di'eved, all of this is, whatever we said here is b'di'eved. Aval lechatchila ein laso shum ulaiso, never do a stuffing, stuffed chicken, stuffed turkey, whatever. Rakim nimlochu shneim, unless you salted them both, the stuffing and the chicken. B'chol ze ma'ir she'em v'molais, in other words, never lechatchila try to salt one to take care of both. In other words, or never try, for that for sure not. You can't salt one to take care of both. I'm saying even if you roast it, you shouldn't do it that way. Should not make any mulaisa, right? If you salted both. That's how he holds. The lechatchila. Now, as far as the halacha that we said that it's okay, just a second. And as far as the fillings, this is only talking about if you have as a filling meat or herbs. If you have hard eggs that will be hardened, then the halacha will be like it's being cooked, because those eggs are going to prevent the salting or the blood to flow out. It has to be pure meat. Now, so is he talking about only eggs, or is he talking about eggs in the meat? Because somehow before in Ayin Vav you already spoke about beitzim or shar basar. He says you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't have stuffing like eggs or other meat even there. Over there he says even of other meat, which seems to be contradicting. Here he says, but the is okay. Then why does he say over there you shouldn't have it at all? And that was in Ayin Vav. In the Ramah, that you shouldn't go ahead and roast it if you have a filling of eggs or other meat. So what's the difference? So some say here he's talking about a mixture of eggs and meat. That even if it's mixed, there is meat, but there's eggs in that mixture, it's no good. Or he could pretty much be repeating the same halacha, that obviously eggs would pose a problem, because that would prevent the flow of blood from coming out. And that's what the deal would be like in this Bashal B'Gdera. It's also even Medi'eved. Whereas in Siman Ayin Vav, it could be he was just talking about eggs. Could be. Even though over there he said it's also to put in stuffing of other meat, it appears to be, the Taz I think says, it appears to be that he only meant it lechatchila there. But here the halacha is clear. Medi'eved is fine. So over there too, the halacha would be Medi'eved, it's okay. So lechatchila you don't do it like that. You would want to salt it first. If you want to do stuffing, salt them separately and then stuff it, and then you can roast it. And the last halacha he brings down over here is also, yeah,
specifically here about eggs.
right.
What about other things?
Well,
things?
Yeah.
Like bread or other things?
It looks like the eggs, the hardened ones, would be more of an issue in preventing the blood from coming out.
Soft things should prevent.
Yeah, soft things. Yeah, it's a good question. Soft things would not be affected, because it says beitzim ani krashim, and we spoke about that in the Achronim speak about the actual issue involved in with the eggs is that somehow they block. So if something is not really a blocking problem, it should not be an issue. Even b'di'eved, it's going to be also if they did not, if were both not salted. If you had other things, especially eggs. Basar shelo nimlach v'lo hudach shenitzla im basar shenimlach v'hudach mutar b'di'eved. Aber lechatchila also litzos basar shenimlach im basar shelo nimlach v'lo hudach. In other words, lechatchila, don't go ahead and roast meat that was salted with meat that was not roasted, even though it was rinsed. But b'di'eved, it's okay. And I guess, you understand that there's the problem here. You have blood coming out of one and out of the other one, so you should not really roast them together. But, what do we say? Nura Mishav Shoiv. The Eish takes care of it, and we're not so concerned about it. And finally, Siman Ayin Ches, pretty much the last halacha, one halacha, Shelo ledabek batzek bebasar shelo nimlach. It's talking about the process called, maybe you can remember, I forget the word, of taking chicken or meat and dipping it in flour. What is that called?
Could it be breading?
Kentucky Fried,
Breading?
maybe?
Breading.
Breading it. Yeah, pretty much. Thank you. Breading it. Yeah. And this appears to be was a method of preparation back then in the Gemara. So there's a whole discussion in the Gemara about breading. Well, it depends on what kind of breading you use. Now, what's the problem? The Gemara discusses the different kinds of wheat, fine wheat, coarse wheat, whole wheat, applied as a breading on a piece of chicken or meat that was not salted. And here you're going to be roasting it. Will that prevent the blood from coming out? Will it be stuck inside? So the Gemara goes through the various steps of figuring this out. In other words, depends. Is it the thick one? Is it the one that falls apart? Is it the thin one? Is it the transparent one? There's all kinds of ways to figure out if the blood is able to come out or not, depending on the makeup of this flour. And of course, it would depend on the grade of the flour. So this is, again, another area where the Mechaber is going to tell us we're not experts in figuring out what the Chachamim had in mind when they say this one is okay, but not this one is okay. And if you see it become red, or not, or you don't see it become red, in other words, as a result of covering it with a layer of bread, does it become red or not? So that's what the Mechaber says here in Sif Aleph, Teufel Botzik be'ov shelo nimlach. You bread a chicken that was not salted with batzek, with dough, with a kind of flour. Afal gav the Gemara maflig, even though the Gemara differentiates ben smida, l'shar kimche, all the various kinds of flours, ben asmik, lelo asmik, where it became red or did not become red. Anan hashtalo bekina, we're today not experts b'milsa, and we don't know to differentiate, and therefore bechol gavno yesh le'asar. One should not roast any chicken or meat breaded with any kind of breading, any kind of flour. It's asur. Aval in nimlach, if it was salted, v'shok de melicha, and it was at least 18 minutes, half an hour, whatever, of melicha, v'hacha kochudach, and you did hadacha, muter bechol gavno. After that point, you could go ahead and bread it if you really want to, because you probably got just about all the blood out. This is the Gemara in Psachim Ayin Daled Omid Beis that deals with these issues. In other words, the becoming red or not becoming red is also a question over there, because you may be able to determine if it came out or did not come out. In other words, what are you seeing there? But we're not experts in being able to figure out the differences. And the difference, of course, would be versus whether you see dam, is there still dam, or you have mohel now. And if you have the thicker type of kemach instead of the thinner one, you actually would be preventing the fire from being able to reach inside and getting out all the blood. That's the problem with the breading. So the Ramah says on that, what's asur is only to apply flour, but you can smear it with oil or betzir. That's not going to hold back the blood from coming out. Basar, you can be moshav v'shemen or betzir basar shelo nimlach. The ein ze me'akev plita. This will not prevent the plita from coming out. And Ramah adds one more halacha. What about pastida? Pastida is like a kugel, like much more of a pie. Thank you. A pie is a better word for pastida, which is basically also batzek, bread, or crust. With all kinds of ingredients, but it's stuffed, it has meat inside, and that meat was not salted. So if you have such a pastida with meat that was not salted, you shouldn't really do it, because what you're doing is yesh lo kol din bishula bikdera. It would be the same din as cooking the meat in a pot. I mean, it's full of blood, it can't go anywhere, it's not going to be drawn anywhere, it's going to be stuck inside. Don't think that the oven, somehow the heat is going to draw all of it out. No. On the contrary, you would have a din of bishul b'ktera. And what does that mean? Bein lekulo, bein lechumra. Lenient, was whether was both, being lenient and being strict. Being strict, that you would need shishim keneged the meat. And what would happen then? The rest will be mutter, which is interesting. In other words, only the meat you would have to throw out.
You would need 60.
Well, in this case,
how much plus, yeah.
Exactly against the whole meat. And the meat you would be throwing out. But the rest of it will be mutter. You wouldn't even need a klipa. You wouldn't even need a netilas mokel, which you usually need by tzli. That's the kula. The Aruch HaShulchan says that that's the kula over here. What's the kula? That you don't need anything. It's completely mutter. According to some, it would not even be mutter. No, you need shishim. That's the chumrah. The kula is that you would be able to save the rest of the pie. That's good to know.
And the meat you have to throw out.
The meat you would have to throw out. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Tomatoes.
What? Yeah. Okay. Just to finish up Hilchos Melicha, I put together like 3-4 halachas that we may not have discussed. Halacha lemaisa that concerns sli. What if you have an electric element instead of fire? Can you use an electric element, wires, to draw out the blood, or does it have to be eish? So these are halachas that Moshe Feinstein discussed, and a lot of poskim. You see it in the poskim of today, technology of today. Can we use electricity? Is that considered heat? You can get very, very hot. Can you use electricity?
The wires would also be glowing.
Exactly. So the halacha is as long as the wires are glowing, exactly. And most important is that the blood is able to drain far away. Okay? Then you could use electricity. Well, the next question that follows is, what about a microwave? Remember, that's what I meant before, that I would talk.
Heating elements.
Exactly. So depending on
around them.
Right. So that's
same temperature.
Right. So that's the question. The question is, will it get hot enough and to be able to extract? So that was the question. So if it does get very, very hot, and it's very hot, I mean you can see it's hot, and the blood is drained away, it may be okay.
Wouldn't that be microwaving it, Lita?
Right. So then the question was microwave. So microwave was also discussed by the Achronim, the poskim of today. And most of the Achronim say don't use microwave because it's not heat, like you mentioned earlier. It's not heat exactly, and it may not be able to get it all out, even if some of it does come out. It does work. It does come out very differently.
Comes out?
I did see a psak from Chacham Ben Zion Bashaul, I believe, that he says that if you can use it for liver, if you had no choice, but throw away the kalim, as a one-time thing. And then don't cook it, or something like that. Yeah, yeah. In other words,
so he must also hold that the liver was frozen.
In place. Very good. Very good.
And the only blood that's a problem is when it came out. But that's not a problem for the liver because it came out. So the only problem.
And therefore, don't cook it. Exactly. Yeah. And therefore, don't cook it because the cooking may bring it out. So anyway, we don't use microwaves, so don't think of it because we don't hold that it's heat. Same thing would apply to trying to roast a piece of meat that was not salted in a frying pan. A frying pan is not an open fire spit. It's like a kedera. It's like being cooked in its own blood. I mean, that will not qualify for a good method of koshering any meat, not just liver, anything. So you can't use a frying pan. It has to be a place, and we spoke about it, has to be a place where the blood can drain completely. There's a question about whether if somebody roasted a piece of meat wrapped in paper. Another question that's brought down. I thought that was very interesting. A lot of poskim say it's no good. It's asur. There are some who say that if the paper is very, very thin, that it will quickly burn as soon as you put it on the fire, then it should be okay, especially that there is a taz that says paper is not a problem. Because some say that paper acts like a barrier. I mean, the taz says no. So, okay, but even though we don't use the taz as a kula, when everybody says it's asur, but if it is thin, I guess you can be mitzar of the taz and say, well, it was a thin piece of paper, the balabosta forgot to take it off. Now, that's paper, not plastic. The wrapper. That's not plastic.
Right. Of course.
Okay? Paper, it's only paper.
Plastic,
yeah.
I'm not so sure you wouldn't.
Yeah. Right, exactly, yeah. And last but not least, the Kaf HaChaim says, don't grind the meat and then use it as a stuffing, or somehow try to then roast it, the ground meat that was not salted. He says, even though you ground it, but the evid you can still somehow do tzliya. The problem is that when you grind the meat, you're not doing the process properly because we hold that you really should do hadacha. And if you grounded the meat, how are you going to do hadacha now? You're going to soak it? There's no way to do hadacha anymore. So he says that because of that, you should not lechatchila ground the meat in order for it to be roasted.
So what you're saying for the hadacha, for the hadacha as well?
As well, we said before, yeah. Even according to the Ramah.
If you did hadacha before the grinding, then it shouldn't be.
Yeah, that should be not should be a problem. No, because we said stuffing. I mean, what's stuffing all about?
There could be some problems with these kebabs.
Well, but the evidence says.
I mean,
We saw the Ramah. We saw the Ramah.
No, but that's
Remember?
all sold. Kebabs are all sold.
Usually, yeah.
Usually they are, but that's the way it would happen.
It could be that's the way it would happen. Kebab would be a good example, right? And even according to the Ramah, that if you did not do hadacha and you roasted it, it's mutter. Nevertheless, the chatchila you shouldn't do so. I saw a few posting say the same thing. That this one is brought down the Kavachayim. Don't grind it until you first, took care of the hadacha and melicha. I mean, that would be the best way to do it. If you did not, and of course you went ahead and roasted it that way, regardless of how you did it, it was by itself or with other meat as a stuffing or not, the fire will take care of it. And that's, of course, the strength of the fire, that even though there is stuffing inside, everybody agrees that as long as it's only basar at least, that the fire will take care of it. Once you put eggs, of course, you complicate matters. In this case, it was also that the preferred way is, of course, to do hadacha. That's not going to be possible if you are. So, lechatchila, do not do it. If you did it, but the evidence would. Okay. We're done with Hilchos Melicha.